In this video, I'm going to cover adding an occlusion layer to your tile map. Combined with a light source, an occluded tile map can be used to block light and create dramatic lighting effects. I also cover lighting in general because there are a few things to keep in mind when setting them up for your 2D game. So the first thing you want for lighting is to have a scene that's a bit dark. And there's a couple ways you can achieve this, and the way I did it was to use a dark color for my ground elements or wall, things that I don't want the player running into, with a lighter background, this red tint in the background. Another way to get the screen darker is to add a canvas modulate layer, and this will really darken your environment and will also make the lights a bit more pronounced. And you see here, I've also tinted the color a bit blue. You know, by default, I believe it comes in white, and that doesn't really do anything. And so you want to change the color, and you see here the darker the color gets, and you can pick any color really. I'm trying to use a contrasting color, so I have this red background, so I want to go something a little more bluish. That's a little too green. Maybe up here a little bit, and then bring that up just a smidge. See now the level's a little bit darker, and the reason you want to do this is because you want the lights to pop out. If the level is really bright and you throw lights on, then you might not really notice them. So uh, once you add a light, well then how do the tile maps uh, get the or take the light into account so you can get some cool occlusion effects? So right here, the light is being blocked by the environment tiles, and I also have a shape here, which is a light occluder 2D, and you use the polygon tools here. Make sure you have this select tool, select mode enabled, and then you can use the tool and add more polygons. And this works very similar to the polygon tools that are in the TileMap editor. Down here, when you're setting up your physics layer, and you see down here, remember, this is how we made our physics box as well. And you see this row of tools right here matches the row of tools you get when you select your light occluder up here, as well as anywhere else you might use polygons in Godot. You'll see these tools come up as well. And so in order for the light to not go through an object, there's two different approaches, and one is using this light occluder where you just add one, and then this will be empty. When you first bring one in and you want to add a new occluder polygon, and then from here is where you go to the add polygon tool, and you can build the shape that you want to help cast those shadows. And in order for your tile map to do the same thing, we're going to go into the tile set for the tile map. And before we did a physics layer, so that way we had the player running on floors and not running into or running through walls. And now we're going to go to rendering, and we want a new occlusion layer. So if you don't already have one, this will be empty by default. Go ahead and hit add element, and you'll get this element here, which is an occlusion layer, and it has its own light mask layer selection here. And for right now, we're going to leave that alone. This is fine. The next thing we want to do is in our tile set on the, and let me zoom in, on the tile that you want to be able to block the light coming from a directional light, then you go here and you close the physics one up and you want to click on rendering and you want to go down here to your occlusion layer, which before wasn't here. So this got added when we created it over here in the tile set on the right. And same thing here as the physics layer. This is going to be empty when you first come in, and you can select it, hit the F key. Oh, I had the viewport selected. So click on your tile, hit the F key when you have the occlusion layer selected, and that'll create your square. And of course, you can always clear this. So let's say you just created that layer, your tile map actually will look like this, and you're going to hit that F key and get that default square shape. I'm going to undo that real fast. And if you want to add your own shape, because your tile map could be different, you just go in here and make sure you close the shape. So with the starting point, and now I have this shape. Of course, you're not really going to see much on here because the light. Oh, here we go. If I zoom in, this directional light assumes a couple things that you don't want light going through anywhere on that polygon that you drew. And so it's not passing through here, and this is why you don't see it on the tiles underneath. Once it hits the top, it hits that shape that we made, and it doesn't let light through. And because I've rotated the light a little bit over here in the rotation, and here I'll move this so you can see the effect. Oh, it's not, for some reason, it's not updating here. Interesting. Oh, I have the wrong directional light selected. So there's another one here. And let's go ahead and go into the transform and select the rotation. And you'll see here, oh, see if I go horizontal, it goes through that each polygon row. But if I come down from the top in any direction, the tiles underneath will get blocked. And then you have this cool cast light effect. Maybe it'd be cooler to move this over here, and then we would have this really cool dramatic lighting. So let me select these, move it right here, and then I will this here. And so now we have this cool lighting effect here. So let's go ahead and go back into the tile map and reset that shape to be a square. So remember, I have the square selected, and what do we hit? We hit the F key, and it just resets the polygon shape to a square, and there's no need to delete the old one. It'll just overwrite the polygon that you have in there. So, and now you'll see we have this cool lighting. So when I hit play, you'll maybe here you're wondering like, where's the light here? And let's take a look at the map and see what's going on here. So in order for the directional light to come through, there needs to be a hole up here for the light to come through, right? So remember what I said before, the light's being cast this way, but this is blocking the light now. And so I'll go into the tile map here and go ahead and select the red square. And I'm going to use the rect tool to click and drag this rectangle here and turn this red. And because our red tiles aren't on that occlusion layer, the light goes through. So we can't really see it there because of the rotation of the directional light. But let's see if we can play with this angle a little bit. And now our player can see that light peeking in from above. And you'll see that it's a little funky right here. I have a really low res screen resolution. So you'll have to play with the settings to get that exact look that you want. One thing that's going to affect that, it's going to be your shadow settings. So you'll see here in the directional light, we want to enable shadows and then set the shadow color. And so it's a bit transparent here. But you can pick any color you'd like. You know, you can have colored shadows, and you see that affects the lighting over here slightly. You get, you know, you can get some really nice color combinations. And this is all with lights. You know, this is just using a two-color tile map and then a separate color for the player so that the player pops out against the background. And we've got pretty decent look and feel going here. And I'll walk through here and you can see there's some lighting there as well. This light on the player is very faint, so you can't see too much of it. It's more of a subtle effect. You can kind of see it here. It's at play a little bit more because I can walk up to the wall and there's light or a shadow being cast from the player's light. And here it's a little more pronounced because now I'm against this bit of a darker background because of this occlusion coming in from the directional light. And now you can see the light a little better that's attached to the player. And you could attach that light to, like, let's say a torch if you want to do something like Terraria, or you're, you know, some kind of dungeon game where you're in a lot of dark areas, or it's a nighttime or it's a night cycle in your game, and the player can pop out a torch or cast a fire spell. You could add a light to that spell or to that torch, and give the player a little more vision, and add some really cool ambiance this way. And so another thing, I want to show you the Light Occluder 2D. And so what this does, well, here I'll make one from scratch. I'm going to go ahead and just hide the two of these. I have a few spread around the level here, but I want to make a new one and show you what that looks like from scratch. So I'm going to hit light and I'm going to scroll up here. I want a 2D point light, and it's going to be needing a texture here, and you'll see a little error here. Node configuration warning. A texture with the shape of the light must be supplied to the texture property. And you can use any shape you want. I have this radial gradient white PNG that I like to use. And so I'm just going to drag that in here. And you can play with the size. You know, right here I'm holding down the Alt and Shift keys together on my keyboard to keep this scaled and scale it in the center. And so I can make this light bigger or smaller. And then I can go into the energy and I can increase its energy so it's super bright, even burning, or I can turn it down really, really low to make it a little more subtle. So, and that gives it a nice look for the environment, and it makes it look, or it adds a little interest to the background, to the single color that we have going on there. And so that's pretty much the gist of it. You know, you're gonna set up your lights however you want them. Oh, the other thing I wanted to cover was the shadows that I mentioned earlier. So let's say we have this directional light, right? I turn it on and now there's shadows being cast. So when we played the game, we saw that there was some pixelization going on here. And this is where you can kind of play with that. When you go down into the shadow section of the light 2D, sorry, the light 2D portion of the inspector, and this is where you turn on your shadow, you set its color. You can set a filter. By default it's set to fast. That's what I leave it at, but you can try other settings and see if maybe that runs a little bit better on your machine. I think this made the shadow a little bit smoother, and so we'll see what that looks like when I actually run the game. So it's still a little fuzzy, but it's not as harsh as it was before. So you're going to want to play with these settings a bit to get that look and feel that you're going for. But it's going to be pixelated a little bit just because the nature of 2D games, especially low res 2D games. You know, if it was higher res, maybe it wouldn't look so bad, right? Because if I zoom out, that line actually looks nice, right? But in this game, the one I have set up, I'm zoomed in pretty far, and so the pixels are very noticeable at that size. There's not too much you can do, you know, when you get there, but that's kind of the look that comes with pixel art. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments or any tips that maybe you've run into when you're building your 2D games in Godot, and maybe some cool light tricks and tips that you like. So remember to drop a like and subscribe for more content. I'm going to keep putting these tutorial videos out. So if you like what you see, go ahead and do that and stay tuned. I'll keep making these. And let me know in the comments what else you'd like to see covered. I'm learning Godot as I go, but I'm doing it in a way where I'm sharing what I learned as I go as well. So that's where these videos come into play. I spent a good little chunk of time expanding the tile map and playing with the lights a little bit. So yeah, I suggest you do the same. That's how you're going to get better at making your games and building things in Godot is getting that mileage in, as they say, getting the that pencil mileage in. So get that time in, practice, 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 and you're just going to keep getting better. Look at other videos too. And if you feel comfortable enough that you've learned something, and maybe you've learned something new that you'd like to share, hey, make a video, pop it up, share it with the world, let everybody know. Uh, Anywho, that's the video. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you at the next one.